Hello, everybody. My name is Ajay Swami, and I am a product leader at Amazon Web Services, AWS, where I manage products related to GenAI and machine learning. So today, I'm really excited to be with you, and I want to share how I utilize GenAI in my day-to-day role as a product manager. So this is really handy for any product managers that want to de-risk your PM role, get more confident, gain trust, and deliver better outcomes more quickly by using generative AI to your advantage. So today we'll be going through some advanced prompting techniques for product managers, and then I'll also touch upon RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and LLM validation, so that you could use those two techniques to your advantage as well. So let's get started. Okay, so here is the agenda for today. I'll start off with the basics of a prompt engineering framework that is going to work really well for your product needs. I'll share four essential prompting techniques. We'll go over zero-shot prompting, few-shot prompting, chain of thought prompting, and negative prompting. Then we'll finally talk a little bit about retrieval, augmented generation, and LLM validation. And then finally, we'll end with key takeaways. So, what do I think about Gen AI and the future of product management? As you can see, we don't know what the future will bring, and this is from Marty Kagan. But what you can do is prepare yourselves to learn the new emerging technologies like Gen AI and use it to propel your product management assets and your delivery outcomes in your favor and in your customers' favor and in your organization's favor. So you are in the Gen AI wave, right? This is not like Web3, crypto, or blockchain. This has far-reaching implications. This is going to fundamentally alter how we build products. I also think that AI is not going to take away your job. Product management is fundamentally a people role where you have to bring people together around a goal, convince, align, and achieve an outcome. You are the key person to understand customers. You need to be empathetic and you need to have good judgment. You can use AI to uplevel your value add and deliver better outcomes. And then finally, you need to start using some of these AI tools today. Don't wait. If there is a big blocker in your organization for using some of these tools, try and convince the people around you by running a pilot or a POC and understand how you can actually get these tools in the hands of your team so you can actually deliver better outcomes faster and more accurately. All right, so this brings us to our first topic, which is the prompt engineering framework. And the reason behind this framework is that it allows you to be clear about your use case and go about it systematically when you're engaging with a large language model. So I like to call it TRRISP. And these are the many dimensions that you can use within your prompt to achieve the right outcomes and the outputs from an LLM. So number one is be very specific about the task. Define the task and what you want to accomplish from the model. So the task could be something as simple as, hey, I want you to create a PRD, or I want you to create a market analysis, or I want to create a set of personas and their behaviors and their motivations. Next, define the role that you want the model to assume. So this can be something like, hey, LLM, you are the product manager at a fintech company that focuses on providing loans to small or medium-sized businesses. So make sure you provide that role description to the LLM so it acts in the flavor of the role that you expect it to act in. Number three is think about the response and the tone and the style. Here, you can really sort of specify to the LLM the language that your organization uses. You can provide it sample documents and really specify whether the tone should be friendly or professional or even quirky, right? Whatever the culture or the organizational fit that appeals to you. Then, provide it with instructions. You can provide the LLM with a set of detailed instructions that the model should follow step by step and respond according to what you define as your success criteria. And then what is success criteria, right? This can be in the form of a list of bullet points, or you can provide some very specific evaluation metrics. For example, the length of the output under certain characters, the format, the factuality, etc. And then lastly, by the way, you're not going to get it right the first time, right? So you can draft a prompt, and then you need to iterate and re-edit those prompts so the outcomes or the outputs from the LLM become better as you tweak your prompts. So keep those things in mind. And if you use a structure like the one that's outlined here, you can definitely start to realize better results that you get from an LLM. Okay, so let's go through the first prompt engineering technique. It's called zero-shot prompting. This is a method where you don't provide the LLM any instructions, right? The LLM has sort of the full creative control to generate or summarize text or provide an output to you based on its own internal thinking. It leans to be more creative, and you want to use this when you want to explore ideas without boundaries. So I'm using ChatGPT for all of these examples. And I just put a prompt into ChatGPT that simply said, hey, I want to brainstorm a new AI product. And the LLM was smart enough to say, hey, okay, who are you building this for? What kind of problem are you interested in solving? Is there any specific industry or platform? And for the rest of this webinar, I'm going to focus on a couple of different things. Number one is we're going to focus on improving a Shopify business that sells soccer t-shirts focused on South American teams. So I provide the prompt on the top right here that says, who is this for? And I say existing Shopify businesses that sell soccer t-shirts. And then the LLM asks me very clearly, hey, what is the goal of adding the AI to your store? And I say, hey, I want to increase revenue and get more customers. So it gives me a whole bunch of ideas that you can utilize and drill down on. So again, zero-shot prompting, very powerful, but also it is explorative and it is more creative. But in the next few prompting techniques, you can see how I actually drill down further by providing the LLM better um, examples and chain of thought reasoning to actually get the real output that I desire from that LLM. So let's move on to the next prompt engineering technique. So let's talk about few-shot prompting, right? Few-shot prompting is the next level of depth that you want to get into, where you can actually provide examples to your LLM or the model, and it improves the quality of the responses. So using my previous idea where I want to create an AI generated hype and storytelling content for my soccer merchandise store, I'm asking the LLM here, my first prompt, hey, here are some example user stories. Can you create ideas? Can you create user stories for my idea for AI generated hype and storytelling? So it creates a whole bunch of user stories. But then I realized, hey, look, this is great that the user stories have been created, but I don't necessarily have any acceptance criteria. So what I do is I send it a second prompt that says, this is an example of a user story with acceptance criteria. Be thorough and rewrite the above stories with acceptance criteria. And within the example tags that you can see here on the bottom left-hand side of my screen, you can say, hey, this is the user story, and then here are the acceptance criteria. So generate all of the user stories in this very specific format as per the example. And the LLM does that, right? So if you look on the right-hand side, there is a rewritten version of the user stories for my idea to enhance my soccer merchandise store. And as you can see very clearly, it has a user story and then it has acceptance criteria. So this is really, really powerful because you're really telling the LLM, I want your output in a very specific format that adheres to my needs or to my organization needs. And you can also add more things, right? You can also add things like, hey, I want to be able to make sure that the complexity of the story is no greater than X points or anything along those lines. And however you want to break it up into sizable chunks. So keep this in mind. Few-shot prompting means you can provide the LLM examples and really sort of tailor the outputs from the model. Okay, so then we move on to the next prompting technique, which is called the chain of thought prompting, right? This is very useful when you want to provide the model a step-by-step reasoning to follow. So it can come up with a well-reasoned, well-thought-out answer. You definitely want to use this technique when there's a multi-step thinking process to achieve the outcome that you want. So the prompt that I use here for the same example for my soccer merchandise store is that, hey, I want to create a teaser product announcement by number one, first providing a name for this new set of AI features. Number two, by listing the key user points and the key user pain points that it solves for. And then number three, describing the core features that are addressing these points. And then finally, you also want to stamp what differentiates you, right? So I also asked the LLM, hey, make sure you conclude by emphasizing unique advantages over the competitors. And throughout the entire messaging of this, the last thing that I add to the LLM is like, make sure this sort of the tone aspect of it, make sure you communicate trust and safety across all of these messaging. So on my first try, the ChatGPT actually does a pretty great job. It says, look, we're going to call this set of AI features Fan Pulse, and it has a nice tagline to it, the heartbeat of South American football now in your store. It talks about what Fan Pulse is. It's a new AI-powered storytelling engine that transforms your store into a living, breathing celebration of South American soccer. It talks about the pain points. It talks about the core features of Fan Pulse. And then lastly, it also really talks about what the unique advantages, and it says Fan Pulse is more than a content engine. It is the missing connection between a fan's passion and your products. So it's really cool that you can do a lot of the heavy lifting of trying to like write a marketing message or a product positioning message by using an LLM, by providing it sort of a step-by-step thinking guideline. And you could use that and you could iterate on it multiple times to get to the tone and the messaging that you want to achieve for your product. Really powerful stuff. And imagine if you have to do this from scratch, it would probably take you 2 to 3 days or even a week to come up with the best form of messaging because you'll have to be inventive, you have to think on your feet, and you'll have to go back and iterate. But with this, you get a pretty solid draft that you can tweak and improve. Okay, and then this brings us to sort of the final way to prompt an LLM, right? This is called negative prompting. This is very powerful and is very applicable when you're within a specific industry that has strong regulatory guidelines or rules to abide by. So what negative prompting is, you provide the LLM precise outcomes by explicitly telling it what not to do and what subjects to avoid. So I'll give you an example. One of my customers is a large financial organization, and when they have their customers come to their website and they ask a question like, hey, which are the best mutual funds to invest in, or what mutual fund should I invest in that is sustainable, the automated AI generative chatbot will give you a set of index funds or mutual funds that the customer has asked for. Now, the customer can also say, hey, what's going to be my return over the next 5 years? And that's a question that you can actually use a negative prompt to the LLM to say not to answer, because returns are not guaranteed, and it can get you in a whole lot of trouble if you tell the customer, hey, you're going to get X% of return over the next 5 years, which is fundamentally not true, or nobody can predict that. So this is very powerful when you want to tell the LLM, hey, only focus on the subject at hand and avoid any other external information that might come from a model's perspective or the data that the model might have been trained on. So if you look at my draft here, it's kind of long, right? So using the same example of the soccer merchandise store, I want to create a PRD, right? And what I'm saying here is, let's create a PRD here, use the below PRD outline, and it's within the outline tags. And I'm tell it very specifically, do not come up with any other sections other than the below. I say avoid dramatic language and do not repeat the information that already has been stated. Be concise. You can also add other things such as, do not use foul language, um, do not reveal any trade secrets, only focus on what's within the paragraph, etc. And this is actually very applicable when you start to use RAG-based generative AI. And we'll get to that in the next slide. But ultimately, what this tells the LLM is really adhere to the prompt and the examples that you have provided. So the LLM will take that and it'll come up with a PRD. And you can see on the right-hand side, I'm just sharing a snippet of the PRD. It comes up with success metrics. It comes up with the messaging that we previously looked at. It also comes up with like a high-level timeline and release planning. Obviously, all of this has to be vetted by the engineering team, etc. But this is an example of you really sort of coaching the LLM on what to do and what not to do. And the what not to do is the key here because it restricts the LLM between guardrails and sets boundaries on which to operate, on which set of data to operate on. So again, really useful and use this to your advantage. And this brings us to RAG and LLM validation, right? So what is RAG? RAG stands for Retrieval-Augmented Generation. It essentially means that, hey, in addition to the context that the LLM already has, based on the data that it has been trained on, you can also provide additional documents that augments its knowledge. So you can actually use this external data sources or the documents that you upload to use that as additional context to provide you a very specific output, whether it's analyzing your financial documents or whether it's analyzing a dump of your customer feedback and providing a sentiment analysis or anything else where you need very domain specific answers. That is actually handled by the documents you upload from your organization. So here, an example for a simple prompt without RAG might be, hey, can you summarize the customer feedback about our latest store update? Well, yeah, sure, but what does it really mean, right? Like, it's just going to pick out nonsense and data that is not accurate, right? So it's going to give you very generalized or inaccurate outputs. But with RAG, what you can do is you can expose your LLM. And by the way, there's various techniques to do this. We won't get into the technicality of it because it can get quite complex. But here with RAG, I'm assuming the LLM has been uploaded a set of documents. You can say, hey, using the last month's release feedback documents, summarize the top 3 concerns with direct quotes. And you can also say, and prioritize which ones should be improved upon immediately. And the result of that is that the LLM is going to look at very specifically the documents or the augmented context that you've provided the LLM, and you'll get precise, validated user insights. So very powerful stuff. And you can, by the way, you can do this through Claude or ChatGPT. In the prompt context window, you can upload a document, and then what ChatGPT will do is it's going to vectorize it, i.e., convert it into tokens in an understandable machine format, and then it will utilize that to actually generate insights instead of just using its own trained data to provide obscure generalized answers. The second thing that I wanted to actually bring to your attention, this is actually really powerful, is what's called LLM validation, right? It's a method for you to verify your AI-generated outputs for factual correctness. So in this case, ChatGPT will give me a full PRD for my set of AI features for my Shopify store. Okay, great. Now I probably want to verify that a little bit more, right? So I can either send that to a different ChatGPT model, or I can send it to a completely different generative AI provider like Claude and say, hey, can you verify this PRD? These are the personas I'm after. And please make sure, and you can also upload documents, by the way. You can also use both interchangeably or together, RAG and LLM validation. And you can say, can you please verify for factual accuracy? And the validation prompt can say something as simple as list the sources or assumptions behind the prediction, highlight any inaccuracies or uncertainties, And then what it does is, it'll go through your PRD, and it'll come up with points or things that you might need to look out for, risks, etc. So what you really have done here, quite simply, is you almost use this as a peer validation mechanism where you've verified the outputs from one LLM to another. So you probably have a stronger PRD, and it's probably come up with risks and inaccuracies. It's probably flagged some content where you'll need to look at it and say, okay, you know what? These are all great points. I need to address these before I actually take it to my team. Okay, so now that we've gone through both RAG and LLM validation, how do you put it to work? The easiest way, if you don't have the technical capabilities or the infrastructure, you need to create your own RAG infrastructure mechanisms, is use something like a custom GPT, right? So you can go to ChatGPT and you can create your own GPT. What is that? It's basically custom versions of ChatGPT that you can tailor for your own specific tasks or topics by combining instructions, knowledge, and capabilities, right? So you can provide it documents, your knowledge manuals, your set of restrictions and regulations, your policy documents, and say, hey, perform a certain task by adhering to this very specific domain and set of knowledge. So a couple of examples for you, right? So one, you can provide your product's internal documentation, user research data, or market analysis to the new GPT model. And then number two, you can validate that, right? You can use prompts like generate a summary of your product's competitive advantage based on your uploaded competitor analysis. And then also clearly identify the data sources, because you want to sort of tie that back from a lineage perspective to say, hey, where did this data come from? And point to that exact data source, because you want to make sure that the LLM is not making up stuff based on the large corpus of data that's already been trained on. And then what is the end result? The end result is that you have a custom product manager GPT, for example, that's trained specifically on verified data, and can enhance strategic insights and operational decision making. So it's very useful for creating documents based on your organization's style, tone, format, messaging guidelines, boundaries, guardrails, etc. So really powerful stuff. Click on the link for custom GPTs. That ChatGPT helps to create your own GPT, and it's super useful. And you can get this done literally in hours. And finally, this brings us to the end, right? So here are a few key takeaways. Number one is, look, you need to get comfortable with GenAI prompting, and it's essential for you as a product manager, because you can get to the level of outputs and outcomes very quickly. We've gone through 4 different prompting techniques, and you can use those to enhance clarity and outcomes. And you need to master these key techniques. And by the way, you can also use these all together. So for example, I started off with Zeroshot by saying, hey, help me build an AI, generative AI feature set for my Shopify store. And then I walked the LLM through a few shot chain of thought and negative prompting, and got to a final, very catered, very crisp PRD, right? On top of that, you can use the RAG and the LLM validation methods to ensure accuracy and trust. So that'll actually help you clarify and better tailor from a peer review perspective of the outputs that you've generated via the model. And then lastly, look, use one of these techniques in your daily PM tasks, and share how it worked and help your fellow PMs. You need to use GenAI to your advantage, and don't get left behind, right? This technology is here to stay, and it's going to assist you, and it's going to propel you even further in your career. So hope you liked it, hope it was useful, and feel free to add me on LinkedIn, or feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone.